What up, what up? This is Finance, Fitness, and Folk channel. We discuss finance, a little bit of fitness, talk about some folk. So in today's episode, I'm going to discuss that black women are growing old and dying alone. So admin notes, thanks again to all the subscribe to the channel. I endeavor to keep pushing it out, give you leverage to better yourselves. So it's getting late. The sun's already set, so I thought I'd go ahead and get on the channel, make this video. I had every intention of doing this in DC because I was in DC today working, but it's Friday, today's Friday, and there was a lot of noise going on in DC. I said before in the previous video, there's a lot of areas I go to DC that's really loud, and I'm walking, and I'm like, man, even in the parks it was loud. So I'm like, man, I've already had a couple of subscribers that have alluded to the fact that like a lot of times when I make videos, I have too much background noise, right? So I said I'm not going to take away the quality of the video, even though I really had a mindset to talk about this topic during that time. But I said, I'm just going to go ahead and enjoy the walk, and I'll do it when I get back over here in Northern Virginia before I go home and make the video. All right. So anyway, let's get into it. So why do I say that black women are growing old and dying alone? What I will say is that it's not just black women, it's black women and men are growing old and dying alone. And I've seen this pretty much my whole life. This is not a new phenomenon, for lack of better words. I can remember clearly in the projects, and I do have some subscribers that grew up within the projects. You know who you are, right? So I'm pretty sure that when I say this, you'll understand and know what I'm talking about, right? Growing up in the projects in Norfolk, this is the late 70s, right? So in the 80s, because I grew up in the 80s, and I'm telling you, like, so I was raised in my grandmother's house, right? My mom raised me, but we lived in my grandmother's house out in the projects, right? So I promise you, it was like the projects was set up like kind of like a courtyard to a certain degree, right? It was rows of apartments, right? And it was a sidewalk in the middle, and you figure on each side, every building had maybe, I think, 10 to 12 apartments on each side, right? So we called that a court, not a courtyard, right? It's if you walk down that sidewalk and you had apartments on your left and your right, you're actually walking through a court. That's what we called it. And I promise you, every other house was an old lady that was alone. I put this everything I love. That's really what it was in that court. Every other house was literally an old lady that lived alone. So my grandmother was already in her late 50s when I was born, right? So she had a lot of friends that she knew in that particular area, because she moved in there about 4 or 5 years before I was born. And a lot of the women that lived in that court was like about 10 years, 15 years older than my grandmother, right? So we're talking about ladies that was in their 70s already, right? In the 80s, by the time I actually, could remember seeing them and talking to them and them giving me whoopings because I was acting bad, and but I mean, as a child, you don't think about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have an adult mind, right? So it's like, all I'm thinking is that, okay, Miss Sally and Miss Daisy. Miss Daisy Ash was a real lady that lived on one of the ends of the apartment. She was like in her 90s when she passed away, right? And I think I might have been maybe 8 or 9 or something like that. So she had been living there since, I guess, the city allowed black folks to move into those units, right? But long story short, with that particular subject, with that, when I think about it as an adult, like it was a lot of old women in those projects that were alone and did not have husbands, right? Some of them might have been widows, I'm not exactly sure. But if I had to take a guess, I'm telling you, more than likely, most of them probably had boyfriends, but they couldn't live with them. Like I said before in the previous video, there was government programs that's still going on to this day, I believe, right? Where it caters towards single mothers, and if the single mother decides to have a husband, right, they can't be on this assistance no more. Or if they live in government housing and or city housing, right, and they wind up getting a boyfriend, and the boyfriend moves in, benefits are cut off, right? So they're dating people, right? But the man can't stay in the apartment with them, right? So I'm pretty sure some of these older women probably had significant others, but the men couldn't live with them, and I never saw them come around, right? Of course, I seen my own male family members come around, and I may have seen like some of these old women, some of their sons may have came around and saw them, but for the most part, they pretty much was living on their own the whole time alone, right? And so of course, the internet wasn't out during that time, right? So I can't really say it was kind of. I don't want to say it was kind of by choice, because you got to figure in those times, right? It's like if you didn't have a man that could take care of you, like women literally really had to depend on the government to take care of them, or have some type of assistance to take care of them. Not to say that women wasn't going to college or was able to get a job to save and do better for themselves. We're talking about old black women in the 70s and 80s. Which means that these women were younger back in the 40s and 50s, when you had segregation and all these other things that prevented women from going to work, let alone a black woman, right? So anyways, this subject has been around for a long time, but fast forward to 2024, I think that a lot of women are growing old and down alone now, is because of feminism, because of all these things that tell women that they can do this and they can do that, which I'm not saying they can't, right? But it's feeding women a lot when it comes to, can you really take care of yourself, and can you really hold things down in old age and not have a partner, not have a husband, not have a significant other as a woman, right? And just like I said, like this is not a thing that's specifically catered to black women. Black men are growing old and down alone too. Contrary to popular belief, there's a lot of black men out here that are single and childless, don't have no children at all, right? I've seen plenty of them, right? You would think that, like, the stereotype is that, most young to middle-aged black men have a whole bunch of kids, and that's not really the case. There's a huge population of black men that do not have kids at all, and don't have a wife. You know what I'm saying? They're growing old alone, right? What I would tell you is that, especially women that's watching this channel, watching this video, not to say that black men don't deserve and don't need to have a significant other, because like I said before in another video, right, we as human beings, we need to have we need to be sociable with people, right? We need to be able to interact with people and have people in our lives, right? Because I'm a loner by nature. Like I love to be alone, but I have a wife and 3 kids, and I still love being around them. It just by nature I'm a loner, right? But even loners will go to a park and be around people. I mean, they may not talk to them, right? But they want to, the fact of them being around other human beings is something that we need, right? And I think with a lot of black women is like once they get to a certain age, is like they kind of like push themselves out of the dating market. Of course, I'm pretty sure some of the women are probably they might be widows and they choose not to to date or to try to be married again afterwards after their husband passed away. But there is an extreme amount of black older women now. Older women, I would say, probably like in the late 50s, early 60s. Not to say that women are old or anything like when they get that age, but but let's face it, once you get to the point of menopause and you get to the point where you can't have children anymore, that's the kind of demographic I'm talking about. As for like women that, society will tell them that they're out of the dating market to a certain degree. Like this, they're past the age where they can have kids, of course, because their bodies can't have kids anymore. And to say that they're gonna be married is not a I'm not saying it's not a goal for them, but but it's unlikely as women get older, right? That's just facts. Like, you got men out here that even when they get in their 60s, they still are in the dating market and they get still married, right? Because a lot of men at that time, they built themselves up and they did the things right for themselves. They have themselves established. They're financially secure, right? And they're very mature, So there's plenty of men that are in their 60s that can still marry, and they have a better chance of marrying versus a 60-year-old woman, right? That's just facts. And it's I think it's a sad situation. I think that that women put themselves in a very precarious situation when they're alone, older versus a man. It's just not a good look for black women to be in this situation where you're growing old and dying alone. It's just not. You got a lot of black women that when I did my research, they never been married and they don't have children. So what happens when you become sick? You know, what happens when you get to the point in your life where you have to retire because of, you know, ailments or whatever the case may be, and Social Security is not holding things down, right? I've seen plenty of older black women that, you know, they're trying to live off of a small pension that they may have got from their job and Social Security, and they're struggling, right? I mean, you know, they've totally maxed out their 401k. They don't have a significant other that can help them with the bills. They help them with other things or whatever. So they're just really not in a good space right now. And not to say that, you know, the older black women that are growing old and down alone, I'm not saying there's not hope for them. What I would say is that I think that some cities do have some programs out there. Not sure if there's any programs around here where I live at, but I think there are some programs out there where, you know, where there are these nonprofits that would go and check on these women, right? I didn't even know about this stuff until I started doing the research. But you know, it's just like any other situation. Like when you have homeless people, when you have folks that are in need, you have disabled folks. You need folks to go out there and look out for these people. And I think that black women that are in older age or mature age, for lack of better words, and they're living alone, I think these are very vulnerable women. And I think that that we as a black community need to really make sure we watch out for them, because, you know, it's this independent stuff is just it's for the birds, y'all. It really is. Like I'm sick and tired of seeing older black women growing old and down alone. It's just crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, you should be enjoying life with somebody. You know, I'm not saying that, you know, that the people that you've dated in the past was worthy or not worthy. You know what I'm saying? You may have made a choice or the decision to not be with these men and chose to be alone. But you put yourself in a very vulnerable state when you do things like that, because women in general that live alone are in jeopardy, because there are a lot of men out here or whatever that do not care, and they have nefarious motives when it comes to women. That's just the way it is. You know, you have a lot of men out here that are just no good, right? And what for black women, I think that it's a really bad situation for a black woman that's in mature age to be living alone, and, you know, and basically don't have a family even go check on them, right? You know, if you're a woman that's in mature age and you don't have a husband, you don't have kids, who gonna come check on you? I mean, you may have friends that may come check on you, but I mean, for the most part, you know, one of the things that I think that really builds legacy for women is a family. And you know, I think personally, this is just me talking, right? I think a lot of women, if not most women, if they're in a situation where they're older and they never had kids and they don't have a husband, it's depressing, you know, because, you know, that's one of the things that women talk about amongst each other. How many kids you have? What are your kids doing? How your husband doing? All these other things, right? Women derive happiness from these things. And I'm not saying that there are women out here that don't enjoy being alone. I got 2 aunts right now that live alone. Well, they live alone, but they have boyfriends, right? They still have boyfriends, but the boyfriend don't live with them. They live alone, right? And they both had careers to the point where, like, they did 30, 40 years and they retired, right? So they were career women. Can't make this stuff up, y'all. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, not to belabor the topic, but black women are growing old and down alone. And it's a very sad situation. And I think that we as a black community as a whole really need to start looking out for these women, because these women are very vulnerable. And we just need to watch out for them, right? You know, we don't impress our beliefs on people, right? But I think that, you know, the black women that are older and in a vulnerable state, we need to take care of them. We need to take care of our black queens. That's all I'm saying. All right. So if you want me to discuss a topic or a subject you think is beneficial to the channel, email me at findingfitnessfolk@gmail.com. My email address is in the description below. Finding Fitness and Folk, Triple F, I'm gone.